Hey, welcome back everyone. You're watching Centerline Designs. My name's Cole if you're new to the channel, and we're getting back to some Snowcat work today. Alrighty, so today, working on the cat, we got some odd jobs to take care of. I was missing a few little odds and ends to get this engine running, so I went through, tried to get a bunch of stuff ordered up. While that's coming in, we have some jobs to take care of anyways. I don't know how well any of this shows up, but today we're going to mount the fuel tank. If you'll see in a previous video, we made this custom, about approximately 9-gallon aluminum diesel fuel tank. It turned out really nice. We never got it mounted, so we need to get this mounted to the back of the cowling right there, and then mount the rad fan. So the aluminum rad I bought for this was intended for a car, and the rad fan is mounting to the opposite side that I wanted, and I'll explain that here shortly. To give you a quick little idea here was the diesel fuel tank. It's got supply and return ports on the bottom, got a place for a sending unit, a vent, nice aluminum billet fill cap. That I want to mount in somewhere like that. It's not gonna be overly complicated. Make a few mounting points. The fuel lines will then go through bulkhead fittings into the engine compartment where there'll be a fuel oil water separator, and go to the fuel pump. So not a lot there, but it's a job we gotta get done. All right, so the next thing is this rad and the rad fan. Now this did come as one unit, it was mounted, but the rad fan is meant to go on the other side where the coolant fittings are. Because in a car, the air would normally go through this way, and when it needs assistance, the rad fan will pull air through the rad into the engine bay, just as driving down the road would force air through the rad into the engine bay. Well, I don't want air moving that way, I want air moving this way. And I did think for a second, maybe I can just reverse the polarity on the fan and get it to blow instead of pull. But the design of this fan, these blades, they don't like doing that. They like running in one direction only. I tested that out, and the rad fan does spin the different direction, but the amount of air it moves spinning backwards is like 2 or 3 times less air than if you spin it the direction it's meant to be. So, can't really get away with an easy fix there. We're gonna have to go ahead and mount it on the outside, and this is all gonna eventually get a bit of a guard around it. So it's not gonna be too hard. Aluminum rad, aluminum housing. We're gonna make some tabs off the side, get this mounted up, get rid of the old factory ones that came with this assembly. And then the one last thing to do with the rad is, rad itself needs a little bit of modifying. Since this vehicle isn't using the instrument cluster, the gauge cluster that came out of the car, we're setting up the engine to run standalone. I need to set up some gauges so that we can get some eyes on this engine and see what it's doing. So the only thing I'm missing on the other side is a port to put a thermostat in. That will give us our temperature reading on the coolant system. And I may even have a fitting on here that we need to adjust. But aluminum rad, and you know, that's what we do here, work with aluminum. So that's not gonna be a problem. Alrighty, I think that's enough talking. Let's go ahead and start getting some of these jobs done. And then the other one coming up, which I'm not sure I'm gonna get done in this video, is get these seats mounted finally. It'd be nice to actually have a firmly mounted seat, and then we can start designing where the controls are going, and I have a nice gauge panel that I wanna make, but probably gonna be in future videos. right, I'm pretty happy with that. Those mounts down there are gonna work out really good. And then I'm gonna put 2 more mounts inside here, which may be a little bit of a pain to get at, but I think it'll work out really well. And my plan for those ones is we're gonna take some aluminum round bar, cut it on a 45, and we're gonna drill and tap that out to accept a 5/16 stainless bolt. And that bung will get welded to the cowling, and then there will just be a flat tab on the fuel tank that rests on top of that and secures down to it. Pretty simple. I think it's gonna work great. Let's get some of that cut up. Okay, well, I went ahead, cut up some 3/4 inch round stock with a 45 on it to match the chamfer on the cowling. We're just gonna face these off, drill and tap them out to a 5/16 18, and then cut a couple pieces of angle for the other side of this bracket, and we'll get this thing mounted. All right, well, we're over at the lathe here. And if you wanna see any videos on this lathe, I just did one mounting up this really nice DRO. You'll see it in some of the playlists there. I fully restored this lathe. It's from the early 1940s. All right, I have the tank shimmed up so that it is parallel with the cab. That's really all I care about. That's what you're gonna see. Level, well, I don't know the machine's level, but parallel to the cab is perfect. And then, there you go. There's those little mounts we were talking about. So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll get these tacked onto the cowling and then the angle tacked onto the tank. Do that for the front and back. Then that should have the tank mounted. Well, there we go. Things have had time to cool down a little bit, so now let's actually see if it still fits. Well, we got two. Well, there's three. All right. Fourth hole doesn't quite fit. Kind of figured that might happen, but it's pretty tight tolerant, so I'm just gonna open up the hole a little bit. All right, well, nothing else is that secure, but that tank is mounted solid, and all it took was opening up one hole just a little bit. Really, whenever you're taking something apart and welding the pieces separately and then fitting them back together, I mean, you've got to pretty much expect that it's gonna shift a little bit. Had I been able to weld all the angle and those bungs on with it all bolted together, well, wouldn't have had to do that, but the fact that we just had to open it up a tiny bit, I am more than happy with that. We got those two mounts. The reason I left gap here is there's gonna be louvers on the front. This is gonna get cut down a little bit. And there's gonna be a foam in here that stops snow from getting sucked in, because not only is the rad pulling its air through there, the intake for the engine is gonna be pulling its air out of here as well. So I'm thinking of opening up this side and putting some louvers in as well. And then down here, well, turned out pretty good. Did warp this 1/8 a little bit, but this is gonna get bolted down eventually as well. And lots of room to access the fuel fittings that are gonna be in here, and a little bit of fuel hose. That's why we gave it that jog. I hate it so much when you can never access anything. So I try to give enough clearance around things so that, you know, it's just not that difficult to put together and take apart. Really, the worst part about this is that back corner bolt, but I'm gonna live with that. I'm pretty happy with how it's mounted. So I think we officially get to check one thing off the list for the day. There's even some time left too, so let's get on to that rad. All right, well, as I mentioned before, I'm kind of using this rad backwards to how it would normally be. I want the coolant hoses to connect on this side, but we're gonna relocate the fan to the other. This rad is set up to have some power steering fluid or something like that go through it, or oil to cool it down. I'm not gonna be using that. I'll likely have a separate oil cooler for the hydraulic system. There is a drain port on the rad. I just pulled that plug because it's plastic and I don't feel like melting it, but we're gonna add in a bung down here. These ones were originally for mounting that rad shroud, but we're just not gonna use them. We're gonna put another bung in here to get an accurate coolant temperature, and then this is intended to be probably lower than the engine it's mounted in, so this bottom hose connection's kind of angled up, which is gonna cause the hose to have a little hook there that I think will be really difficult to get the air out of, so it'll wind up airlocking a bit there. So we're gonna cut that off, and I'm just gonna roll it so that it's facing down, and we'll re-weld that back on. And that's pretty much it. Get the tabs on the side for the fan shroud, and that's gonna be it. So let's get back to it. All right, well, with that, that coolant port welded back on, now we just need to go ahead and we're gonna drill and tap to make another bung, just like we did when we mounted the fuel tank. And that is gonna accept our temperature sensor, which will give us our coolant temp. All right, well, that GoPro died on me there and I couldn't find any other charged batteries, so we're back to videoing on the phone. I just went ahead off camera and I made up 4 brackets using just 2 pieces of scrap plate bolted together. One side's gonna get welded to the rad and the other side will get mounted to the fan shroud. And that's pretty much gonna take care of it. So let's go ahead and get these welded on. Oh, that is some ugly stuff to weld. The coating they put on there just contaminates. There we go. All right, well, I got the rad mounted again. Everything's really sturdy. It's very functional. Maybe not the cleanest, but it's pretty good. The welding on that rad was a little finicky due to the contamination of whatever paint they put on it, but we got it done. And we also got that fuel tank mounted, which I'm really happy with. So I think we can officially stroke both those items off the list. As always, thank you for watching. I am really enjoying seeing the growing support for this build. It makes me want to just keep going. So thank you very much, and we will see you in the next one.